The Avengers' time has reached its conclusion. Steve Rogers, professionally known as Captain America, is now old and retired as a superhero. After waking up from his slumber, Steve contemplates the thought that no matter what year or time it is, a man always has to open his eyes, even if he does not want to. Steve gets up from his bed, and his wife, Rosa Rogers, brings him a cup of coffee. Steve says, "What did I do to deserve this kind of treatment? Coffee in my bed as soon as I wake up." Rosa tells him, "I'm just grateful to see my living legend still alive, at least for now." Steve reveals, "My doctor said that I am fine, but I have mild arrhythmia." However, since Rosa is also his doctor, she tells him, "Take it easy for the day. Besides, going through the storage stuff in the living room so we can stop living in a museum." Steve agrees with her as he thinks about how Rosa is nice to him today, and she thinks that he did not notice, something she hopes he forgets. He recalls today's date, August 13th, and gets out of bed to leave the room as he watches his old poster of Senator Rogers. He glares at it for a few minutes and thinks to himself that he does not get to forget it, since his whole life is built upon it. The world has developed and reached a stage where cyberpunk activities are real. Steve stands in the crowd, where a young woman with a Spider-Man backpack notices him and asks, Are you the real Captain America?" Steve nods, and she asks for a selfie, which makes him realize that the world will not let him forget his past, as he watches an Iron Man replica with a Captain America logo t-shirt. Suddenly, the woman calls out to him since he zones out, and Steve apologizes, as his mind is not in its right place since he has gotten older. Later, Steve reunites with Luke, professionally known as Luke Cage, a retired superhero with superhuman powers and bulletproof skin. Together, they go to the park to meet Matt Murdock, also known as Daredevil. They discuss the situation of the Watcher Act, which supposedly turns every kid with an old camera phone into a criminal, and the terror curfews. After that, the three discuss their everyday life and what they do to spend their day. Luke reveals, "I'm just an ex-mayor. You're a symbol. Our rights are being squashed, and your voice means something against that." Matt replies, "I'm tired of these bastards, Steve. I'm tired of their eyes," as a small metallic eye keeps an eye on them from above. Steve returns home and cooks food for himself and his wife. She asks, "How is coffee with Luke and Matt? Still fighting the good fight?" As he replies, "They are. They tried to guilt trip me for not doing enough myself." When he presents the food, they watch the news about the Red Skull, Johann Schmidt, also known as Hitler's right-hand man. They say that Schmidt was trying to take down Hitler from the Third Reich, but Steve reveals he tried to take down Hitler so he could lead the Nazis. How can they? On the channel, they call Captain America, the man who came after, who twisted their story. Steve becomes angry, but his wife calms him down as she claims it's just fake propaganda they're trying to make up for controversy. He returns to his bedroom, exclaiming that he cannot trust anyone, and looks at the picture of his time at the Avengers. He claims that nobody cares, and focuses on the time when Iron Man and the rest of the Avengers discovered a Hydra bombing plot. They arrested the criminals. At the Stark household, Tony Stark's son, James Stark, asks for some coffee from Kyle Jarvis, who also reports, "I just heard from the president. He wants you to come up with a better series of soldier armor, now that Latvia has increased hostilities at the Hungarian border." James carelessly asks if there's anything else, and Jarvis reveals that they might have to take down an old friend, that friend being Steve Rogers. Later on, Steve is busy preparing for a live interview on a news channel, but before they air it on national TV, James arrives and apologizes for his tardiness. Steve calls him Jimmy. James replies, "Oh, I haven't been called that in a long time. You really do live in the past, don't you?" And the assistants ready him up as well. The broadcast begins with the news about the docuseries about the Red Skull, and the host welcomes everyone by introducing Steve Rogers and the CEO of Stark Technologies, James. James talks about the problems that have arose around freedom of speech, and James blames it all on old men. He further reveals, "Mr. Rogers here has become quite vocal that this docuseries I should not air." Steve, enraged, tells him, That's not even remotely true, James. The Red Skull was a monster. A lot of good men and women died trying to stop him. This travesty of reporting is a slap in the face to those heroes." James remains as confident as ever and asks, "At what point do these people start being called heroes?" Steve says, "You and others, like my father, painted the world as black and white, heroes and villains. Then you brought us H-Day. With that, they announce Hero Day, also known as H-Day and known as a national tragedy. The day was announced when the whole of Boston was leveled and hundreds of people died. An unparalleled number of deaths fell to Dr. Bruce Banner, Hulk, one of the founding members of the Avengers. Steve retaliates and reveals, I've said it before. It was Ultron. He enhanced the villains, took control of Banner." James strikes back and says, yes, Ultron, the evil, powerful AI created by yet another member of the Avengers, Dr. Hank Pym. Since the Avengers are behind many disastrous cases, how should they even begin to believe Steve Rogers about the Red Skull? Steve becomes angry and accuses James of tarnishing his own parents' legacy, and he angrily walks away as he thinks about how he let James get the best of him. He remembers how his parents used to fight with him as well, and contemplates the fact that when he was of James' age, he was in the trenches. The flames of anger try to catch up with him, but his superiors took his powers away, took away his magic. Steve begins to have a flashback of that day in Boston with the Avengers. They're flying into Boston, and as soon as they land, Steve sees Spider-Man, impaled by a piece of metal in a pile of rubble. Spider-Man, with his last breath, mutters, I saved my aunt. Her name's May Parker. Promise me you'll keep her safe, and my identity safe, even after my name's As he closes his eyes, he passes away. Everyone mourns his death. Meanwhile, in the present, Steve tries his best to suppress these memories, and suddenly, James's cyborgs arrive and tell him to go home since it's past curfew time. He agrees to them, but he wonders how he will reach home since no subways are running. As he starts walking home, he sees a group of kids messing around with skateboards and a video camera. The cyborgs destroy their cameras on the charge of illegal recordings, and they begin to hassle the teens. However, Steve tries to stop the cyborgs, but they tell him to go away because of the curfew. Now, Steve becomes rebellious and manages to disarm one of the cyborgs. He believes he has become slower and weaker. He continues to beat up the cyborgs until one of them swings the baton on his skull, and he gets overpowered by them. The kids make a run for it, and suddenly, numerous hooded figures arrive and take down all of the cyborgs. The hooded figures tell Steve, "It's okay. You're not going to die. Yet." As they throw a bag over his head and take him with them. Meanwhile, James heads to Stark Technologies, a place called the Raft. A scientist named Maxwell meets James as he arrives. Maxwell tells him, "I respect that you're the only one who can make contact, but our scans are telling us that too much usage can lead to irreparable damage. There's also the danger of the public finding out." James thinks he is giving him a threat, but Maxwell dismisses it away. So, James tells him to get out, as James goes in to have a meeting with his father, Tony Stark. Tony's head is suspended inside a regeneration chamber, alive. James picks up his mask and greets him. Hey, Dad. On the other hand, the hooded figures take Steve to their hideout. They pull the bag off his head, and he sees Luke Cage sitting in front of him. Steve begins to ask rapid questions, and Luke's counterparts quickly ask, "You sure about this? He doesn't seem like he'll be on board." Luke quickly responds, "He will be, 'cause he knows we're at war. Ain't that right, Cap? And you were made for war." When Steve finally regains his composure, he asks, "Damn it, Luke, what is all this?" Luke reveals that Matt has died, but Steve fails to believe him, as they saw him this morning. Luke reveals that the situation is getting out of hand, and S.H.I.E.L.D. and the new Avengers are laying waste to the other countries. He further reveals, "It's all under control of a conglomerate, a group that Jan and Tony's kid is a part of." Luke demands Steve to share the truth with the world, but Steve is losing faith in himself since he failed to protect the skateboarding kids. Luke presents Steve with something he is familiar with, and his assistant shows Steve the super soldier serum they replicated, the thing that made him known as Captain America. While the assistant reveals it killed the last person they tested it on, they believe that it works on certain people. Luke tells, "I don't expect you to be a part of our group of defenders here, working from the shadows. You're Captain fucking America. You're an Avenger." Ever since Luke's bulletproof skin has become immovable, all he could use was his knowledge. He introduces Steve to Amy, a former agent in charge of new S.H.I.E.L.D. members, the ones that beat Steve in the alley. Luke reveals, "Matt died defending the people who the system was trying to disappear." Defenders have some agents inside the Avengers, and they provide them with some photos of the abuses. Amy calls them the Americans, and they are the people they have to fight. Now, for the next few days, Steve continues to go through some tests until he finally becomes suitable enough to use the super soldier serum, and he leaves a message to Rosa. "Rosa, it's me. I'm sorry this is a message and not in person. I just need you to know I'm okay. I'm more than okay, really. I won't be home for a while because there's something I need to do. I'm opening my eyes, and the eyes of others, but I can't do it alone. Rosa, I'm going to assemble the Avengers." Join us next time to see what happens next in this fascinating tale from the future. Thanks for watching. If you want to dive into more comic content from us, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to our channel.